So we're gonna get that in just a minute. We're gonna get started on our soup. Now, I have a pot on my stove that I'm gonna saute some bacon on. Let me get it on. We're gonna cook some bacon. I've got about 4 or 5 slices of bacon here. Now, you can use, whatever kind of bacon you like. For this recipe, I want it to have a little bit of fat because that's what we're gonna use to saute our onion. So I like to cut it into little diced pieces before I cook it. If you want to, you can cook it flat and then crumble it, but I just find it a little easier to do it this way, but you do whatever you like to do. Now remember, I always cut my meat on a separate board. I do not put raw meat on my wooden cutting boards. Some people do, up to you. I'm gonna put this in our soup pot to let it start crumbling, or cooking, not crumbling, but cooking. And we're gonna get started on our corn. Now, I'm gonna show you a little trick. You may or may not know this, but I have 8 ears of fresh corn that I have washed and trimmed the ends off. But a great way to cut corn off the cob and not have it going everywhere, which it will do, is to use a bundt pan. If you don't have a bundt pan, get a regular bowl, a big enough bowl. Put another bowl inside, upside down, and put your cob on your top, and then just cut down. And the corn goes inside the container. Now, you might have 1 or 2 pieces. I did. That's a far cry from having it go all over your counter, because it really will. I like to just cut the kernels off. And then I'll show you what I like to do with my corn after I cut off the cob. If you want to use frozen corn, you can. You would need about, 2-3 cups. Then what I like to do is take my knife and go down the edges. Some people call this milking the corn. What you're doing is getting all of that extra little bit off the cob. Okay? And I've got 8 ears of corn. This is just yellow corn. If you've got the peaches and cream corn, that's delicious. White corn, silver queen corn is good in it. Whatever kind you have will work. I love corn in any way, shape, or form. But corn and potato chowder is so good. And yes, I even eat it in the summertime. I eat soups year-round. Does not have to be cold weather for me to want soup. I like it year-round. Okay, that's a lot of corn, but that's okay. That's what we want. This is one of those recipes that you could totally make in your crock pot or your Instant Pot if you wanted to. Just cook your bacon like I'm doing, and then add everything to the crock pot. Put it on low for 4 or 5 hours, would be delicious. Or if you're doing it in an Instant Pot, I would use the saute function to cook my bacon. Then we're gonna remove the cooked bacon. And then I would add the rest of the ingredients. And I would cook it in an Instant Pot for probably 10 minutes, would be plenty to cook the potatoes and the corn. And then you could, thicken it up like I'm gonna show you at the end how to thicken it up. If you, by the way, are making a soup and it's more of a liquidy soup that you're making a broth with, these cobs down in the soup add a lot of flavor. So feel free to add the cobs to your soup if that's what you want to do. Now, see, just a few escaped, not too many, just a little bit. Whole lot better than what it would be if I did not do that bundt pan. All right, let's check on our bacon. It's just starting to cook. Let's turn that up just a little bit. You will need some potatoes. I have here just some, I've already peeled them. I just have about 5 Idaho potatoes, just baking potatoes, or Yukon Gold is good in this. You could really, with this recipe, use any potato that you like. Now, I want to put my potatoes back in the water until I'm ready for them. You want to cut them up into bite-sized pieces. I did peel mine. You don't have to. If you don't want to, make sure they're scrubbed really good. This is a great recipe for those new little potatoes that you get out of a garden. I can remember when my mother was alive and she always had a garden, and we would go out just as soon as we thought there would be those little new potatoes under the vine. We would go gently dig some up, and oh my goodness, there is nothing better than those fresh potatoes and the corn out of a garden. So if you grow a garden, I strongly suggest you dig up some of your potatoes and use them in this soup. It's so good. Ah, looky here, my knife is sticking to my potato. Now that is odd, that starch. Get that off of there. I hear my bacon, and I'm telling you, I don't know of many things that smell as good as bacon cooking. It's just an instantly recognizable scent. So good. I go a little heavier on the corn than I do the potatoes, but you can add, you know, as much as you want to your recipe. It's delicious. I cannot wait to eat this soup. And like I said, if it is, you know, winter time and you don't have that fresh corn, feel free to use frozen corn or even canned corn. If that's what you have, use what you have. All right, let's check on this bacon. I smell it. It's cooking away. We just want to brown the bacon. And when the bacon is cooked, you want to remove it, put the bacon in another bowl, but leave the drippings in the pot because that's what we're going to saute our onion. You will also need 1 onion chopped up. I've already chopped mine. So I'm going to take a quick break, clean up my mess. When I come back, we will take the bacon out, saute the onion, and get the soup going, and we'll get started on our chocolate zucchini bread. I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, we are just going to remove this bacon out of the soup pot and put it in another bowl. But remember, we're going to leave the drippings down in the pot because that's going to add a lot of flavor to this dish. Now, in those drippings, you want to saute 1 onion, chopped up, for just a minute. Just, you know, maybe 60 seconds or so. The bacon, of course, is hot. Woo. To that, I'm going to add some salt and pepper. Potatoes and corn need salt. Now remember, your bacon is a little salty, so be careful with it. Then we're going to add, well, no, let me add my dried thyme first, and 1 clove of garlic chopped. Stir that around. Gonna add my corn. Get all that corn out of there. Add my potatoes that I drained. Then we're gonna add 1 box, or this is 32 ounces, so a quart, of chicken broth. I'm gonna turn my heat down. All right. And 1 cup of milk, or half and half, or evaporated milk, whatever you have. Stir that around. Oh my goodness, look how beautiful. Now, we just want to let this simmer for around 10, 15, 20 minutes, just until the potatoes are cooked through. So we're just gonna let that go. Now, let's get started on our chocolate zucchini bread. One of my favorite recipes. I love this. I remember the first time I ever made it for my mother. She just went crazy over it. So this one is for you, Mom. I have here 2, these are like 9x4, 8x4 baking pans, loaf pans, that I'm gonna spray with nonstick cooking spray. You can also make this as muffins if you want to. Just put it in muffin tins, but traditionally I make it as bread. I've done both. Then what you want to do, I want to show you an easy way. This step is optional, but it makes it so much easier to get the bread out. We're going to make a little sling for our bread. Now I have 1 sheet of parchment paper. Don't use wax paper. And then put it down in there, and then just fold your little edges back so that they, won't fall down in the batter. And I like to go ahead and spray the parchment paper too. Probably not necessary, but I do it because I just don't want to take any chances. And you've made a little sling that you can use. I'll show you, you just, when it's done, you can just lift it right out of there. So easy. This works on all kinds of bread. This is a great tip too if you're making meatloaf. Just make your little sling. You could do it out of parchment or foil. Don't use wax paper. Wax paper is not safe to go into the oven. Can't remember if I sprayed that one, so we'll just give it an extra one. Then we're gonna make our batter. The first thing we're gonna do is, I have 2 cups of flour, 1/3 of a cup of cocoa powder, some cinnamon to taste, at least a teaspoon of baking powder, and a teaspoon of salt. We are gonna whisk those things together in a bowl. It's just a separate little bowl. You can use a stand mixer to do this, or a hand mixer. I'm gonna show you how to do it with a hand mixer because I think that's probably what most people have. I have here 3 eggs at room temperature. And I have 2 cups of sugar. This is not a diet recipe, but it is good. Then I have 1 cup of just a neutral oil, like vegetable oil or canola. Either one will work. And some vanilla. About a teaspoon to a tablespoon, whatever you like. I like a tablespoon. And I have discovered I really like Mexican vanilla, and that's what that was. I have a sweet friend. You're just gonna mix this till everything's incorporated. A lady that I know from years ago at Fellowship Chapel, Frida, her son is a missionary in Mexico, and I actually went to school with him. she heard me say on the program one day that I liked Mexican vanilla. So she had him go in Mexico to a market there, and she sent me a bottle of Mexican vanilla, and oh my goodness, it is so good. So you want about 2 cups of zucchini. I'm using a box grater. You can use a food processor or whatever you want. Just wash the zucchini. You don't need to peel it. And I'm using the large holes of a box grater. And I'm just going to shred this zucchini, the whole thing. I'm not going to measure this. Now, this is one of those recipes, if you if you're a gardener or if you know a gardener, and you have an abundance of zucchini, this is a great recipe for that. And it's also, when you have more than what you can use, go ahead and shred up your zucchini and squeeze out as much water as you can, and then freeze it in like 2 cup serving sizes. And you can put it in a, if you have a food saver, use that. If you don't have a food saver, just squeeze out as much of the air as you can and freeze it. So in the wintertime, you can have zucchini bread. Really good. All right, we're gonna add our zucchini. Well, let me do the dry first. Now what you wanna do is incorporate your dry ingredients with your wet ingredients. If you have a stand mixer, just, use that thing, because this is a thick batter. Get all of that out of there. This is a quick bread, so, you don't have to add it a little bit at a time. I just dump it all in there and use my mixer. Stand back a little bit because that flour and cocoa powder goes until it gets moist. I like to take my little scraper and scrape down the sides. This is a great way to get some zucchini in your kids too, because it doesn't taste like zucchini. This zucchini just adds nutrition and moisture. When you've got it just about all mixed, add your zucchini. So good. I can't wait to eat this. My mother just loved this recipe. Loved it. I can remember making it for her. It's just bringing back so many memories for me. Just incorporate that zucchini in there. Preheat your oven to 350 degrees. All right, I'm gonna clean up my mess. When I come back, I'm gonna show you how to finish this up. Then we'll pop it in the oven, check on our soup, and make our breadsticks. I'll be back in just a minute. Alrighty, now we're gonna add some chocolate chips. I'm using mini chocolate chips because I like the little mini ones better in baking, but use what you have. Then I have some walnuts here. If you have a nut allergy, feel free to leave these out or substitute almonds or pecan, whatever you want to use. I like walnuts in here, but they need to be chopped up a little bit. So what I like to do is put them in a Ziploc baggie and then take my meat mallet, but you could use a rolling pin, a pan, whatever you have. And I like to kind of just get them in smaller pieces. not so fine as like a flour. And dump those in. You want about 3/4 of a cup. And you can either use your mixer or just use a spatula to stir that all in there. I find once you add the nuts and the chips, it's easier just to switch to a spatula. And then stir that together. And again, if you want to make this into muffins, you can. You just obviously won't bake it as long. Now, we want to add the batter. Makes 2 loaves. I like to just get it as even as I can. Just eyeball it. If you're going to bake muffins, they take about 25 minutes or so, or until a toothpick comes out clean. The bread like this takes about an hour at 350 degrees. And it is so delicious. That little touch of cinnamon adds just the best little flavor to it. Okay? Well, what I like to do anytime I'm making like a little quick bread type thing is take my pans and just drop them a couple times on the counter. What that does is removes the air bubbles from the middle, and you'll get a little bit better texture on your bread. Pop these in a 350-degree oven for 1 hour. Somebody set me a timer for an hour. And then we will get started on our breadsticks. Let me get this out of my way. Now, what you will need for this is, of course, a baking sheet. Clean up my mess. And you can either use parchment paper or non-stick foil. I just out of habit use the non-stick foil. I love this product, as you know. Makes cleanup a breeze. And you will need 2. I'm doing 2. You can do as many or as few as you like. I'm just using canned biscuits. You can use canned biscuits. You can use canned breadsticks, whatever, just some kind of dough. Don't use the flaky ones. These are the Southern style because you don't want the layers to fall apart. So what you're going to do, my soup is cooking away. Take them out of there. And I'll show you how to do one real quick. Separate them. Take your biscuit, roll it into a log. About 10 or so inches. And then fold it into a knot. That's all you got to do. Take your ends and tuck it in there. Place it on your tray. I'm going to take a quick break. I'm just going to keep rolling these out, pop them into a 400-degree oven for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, till they're golden and brown. Then I'll show you how we will make the delicious topping to go on these. I'll be back in just a minute. Alrighty, now our bread is done. We baked it at 400 degrees for about 10 minutes. I have melted a stick of butter, and I'm gonna add some Italian seasoning, garlic powder, and poppy seeds to the melted butter. Couldn't be simpler. And then we're gonna brush this mixture over top of the bread. And then we'll sprinkle a little bit of grated Parmesan cheese over each one. And that's all you gotta do. It's so simple and so easy and so good. Now, our soup is done. What we're gonna do, I'm gonna use an immersion blender. This is just purely to thicken it up just a little bit. You don't have to do this, but I like to have it just a little thicker. I'm not gonna puree it all. I'm only gonna do about half of the soup. If you have a blender, you can take half of it out and do it in a blender. Just be careful because remember, it is hot. Come on, you. Why are we not wanting to work? Okay, blender. Well, maybe I won't. Let's change my plug. What's going on here? Okay, well, we won't be doing that then. We will just take a spoon and just kind of mash some of the potatoes just to get it just a tiny bit thicker. I don't mind my soup to be, you know, a little bit more liquidy because then I've got a broth to sop up with those biscuits. That's fine. Remember our bacon. Don't forget your bacon. To serve this, you just want to ladle some into a bowl, a soup crock, or whatever you have. Be sure you get plenty of that delicious broth. And then sprinkle it with a little bit of bacon. I mean, really, oh, so good. Or a lot of bacon, however much you want. You can also put the bacon in the pot, but I think it gets a little soggy when you do that, so I like to serve it just as a garnish. Put a couple of your little bread knots on there. Here is our zucchini bread. We took it out of the oven. It bakes for about an hour, and then, or until a toothpick inserted comes out clean. Let it cool for 10 minutes before you take it out of the loaf pan. Let it cool completely, and then slice it into, I like about 1 inch thick slices, but you could also do little bite-sized pieces, however you want to do it. There you go, a delicious and easy meal any night of the week. Our homemade chocolate zucchini bread, our corn potato chowder, and our Parmesan bread knots. Delicious and easy. Thank you for joining with me, and I will see you next time on Everyday Manna.